Mate, do it.
Cool.
Podcast. Talk to me.
Yes. So I went on a podcast
Yeah.
probably about 6 weeks ago, and because it was Maternal Mental Health Week, and obviously I specialize in maternal mental health, so I was invited onto that, and that then made me think, do you know what? I want to start one of my own, because I just think podcasts are quite popular at the moment. It's a good way of kind of like creating a different type of content. And I know I like podcasts and I like talking and I like all things like to do with mental health and psychology and all that kind of stuff. Like it genuinely really interests me. So I set one up and I released my first episode last week. It's only had like 33 listens, but I'm good with that.
Hey,
It's a start.
hey, that's
Yeah.
awesome. How did you find it?
Yeah, okay. I think it was difficult because the first one I did was just on my own. The second
Yeah.
one I did was an interview. So I did feel a little bit like it was a bit it's different. It's a different vibe, isn't it, when you're talking to someone compared to recording on your own. And there was definitely very much like my own doubts of are people going to listen? Are they going to enjoy it and all that kind of stuff? So I suppose a little bit of doubt crept in, but I thought, do you know what? It's needed because it's such an important area, not just mental health, but I think maternal mental health as well is a really important area because obviously people can, really struggle with their mental health in pregnancy and postnatally. And I really
Mm.
wanted to provide like relatable content, because I'm a mum myself and I've kind of been through that journey. I'm on that journey of parenthood now. Do you know what I mean? Um, so yeah, it's all going good. I've recorded a couple of episodes and I'm just going to do them like fortnightly. So I'll just see where it takes me.
Mate, it's definitely something that's pushed to the wayside, isn't it? I
Mm,
was speaking to my missus last night and like not preparing for this, but like, oh, I got an interesting conversation tomorrow morning, and I'm just like, it's definitely one of those things that is seen as a female problem, which
mm,
personally I don't understand. If
yeah,
it affects one of us, it's going to affect both of them. It's going to affect
yeah,
all, and everybody's going to get some sort of impact from it. Just like the quote unquote
yeah,
men's mental health is only a men's problem. You're like,
yeah,
no, it's a problem.
yeah,
Like a
yeah,
pothole's a problem. Let's kind of fill it up,
yeah,
guys.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I definitely think that I suppose controversially, my view of working with people is about holding the mother, and that's what I call my podcast, Hold the Mother, because
Mm,
my kind of ethos is that when you look after the mother, she's well, and when she is well, she is a better wife or a better partner, or but also a better mum as well. So I suppose I don't want fathers to think, oh, that we're not important, and because you're absolutely right, dads and partners can also struggle from mental health problems. And if you've got a wife or a partner that is got a mental health problem, you're more likely to suffer as a result of that, and maybe even develop your own mental health problems if your partner has one.
mm.
So I think you're right, like it can happen to all of us, but my passion really is the mother and working with her because I am that person. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah,
I
yeah, for
am
sure.
a mother. But yeah, I suppose it's just to emphasize that I don't think that I'm not trying to say that dads aren't important or that they don't suffer because they do, but my focus is on the mum.
No, I don't think that comes across from your perspective, mate. It's more of a, I think dudes are gonna do a better job of being part of the conversation. Because it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
well, first of all, we have no fucking idea, right? It
Mm,
don't happen to you. You're not going to understand, right? But that
yeah,
doesn't mean we can't empathize with one another. And I think we
yeah,
we can develop that empathy through talking.
yeah,
What's
yeah,
that like? What was the experience? How did you feel? Yada yada. Next thing you're gonna
yeah,
strike a note, right? And you're
yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh, I can relate to that in whatever experience. Bingo.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that I still think there is a lack of talk from men because of the stigma around having a mental health problem and stuff like that. And I also think, not to overgeneralize, but a lot of men maybe won't ask their partner how they're feeling because they think that talking about it will make it worse. Do you see what I mean? Whereas
Mm.
sometimes if your partner says to you, you know, how was your day today? How have you been feeling? That can actually feel like it can meet a need. It can make you feel like, oh, they're interested in me. So there's kind of like this mismatch between what women need and what men think they're doing. And again, this isn't across the board, but this is kind of like a pattern that sometimes can happen. The
Yeah.
man doesn't want to talk about it because they don't want to trigger the woman, but then the woman feels like, well, I do want to talk about it because I want you to listen, I want to feel heard. So that can cause a bit of friction as well.
Mm. That's a good point.
Mm, yeah,
That's a real
but
good
it might
point.
work the other way around. It might be that women are less likely to ask their partners how they're feeling because they have the view that, well, they're a bloke and they can just deal with it, and they don't talk about feelings, so maybe it doesn't bother them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. That's been my experience.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. But I think most dudes run away
Mm.
from how they feel so they don't understand it,
Yeah.
or the other way around, they don't understand it so they run away. But the outcome is they
Yeah.
don't friggin' understand it, right? So they
Yeah.
haven't really got this answer
Mm.
available. And if they're around people, male or female, that ask them how they feel, they're going to run away from it, and
Yeah.
then, habit would dictate over time that if the answer to how do you feel is sound, I'm
Mm.
fine, leave me the fuck alone, you're
Yeah.
gonna stop asking.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Which then will further reinforce the lack of understanding because you're not connecting with it
You're
all.
not dealing with it.
Yeah, exactly. But it's understandable. And even though I work with mostly women,
Mm,
um, even women can cut off from feelings
mm,
because feeling difficult feelings isn't a nice thing to do. And if we had a choice, we would just avoid it because I don't think anyone likes to connect with pain and suffering. You know,
mm.
it's easy just to push it down or to disconnect from it or to try and focus on something else. I don't think it's just men that do that. I think women can do that too if they have learned to, that it's like a coping strategy, you know, especially if it's something that has originated in childhood. It can be an automatic thing that feels really painful and I don't like those feelings. So if I learn to switch off of those feelings or push it away or not think about it, then I don't have to connect with it. And then that gets reinforced over time, but then becomes a problem. And at some point, they'll probably go and seek help because not feeling is not the answer. You've got to feel to heal is the mantra that I really like. You kind of have to connect with the pain to heal and move on from it.
Do you think feelings provide life with meaning?
Feeling emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you don't feel anything, you're quite disconnected from the world and
Mm,
your environment. And, you know, going back to what I was saying a minute ago about when people can disconnect from their feelings, a byproduct of that is that they can disconnect from good feelings because it's just kind of you disconnect from emotions and that can include positive ones. So I honestly do think that, you know, connecting with feelings good and bad can help. And obviously it's nicer to connect with more positive feelings, isn't it? But you know, yeah, I do think, and if you think we're humans and we emotions are a natural normal part of us, and we all have feelings like anger, sadness, happiness, joy, anxiety, we all have those like fundamentally. So maybe we're designed to have them for a reason.
yeah.
So I would say, yeah, that we, you know, it does provide a life with meaning, but maybe it doesn't feel like meaning when you're connecting to sad feelings or shame or embarrassment or difficult feelings.
Yeah, I think we fall into the trap of becoming how we feel, right? It's
Mm,
like, oh, I feel sad right now, I am sad. I feel depressed right now, I am depressed, and we
yeah,
get so attached to it that it's
yeah,
hard to leave them by the wayside when it comes Monday morning and you got to go fucking make some Joe. It's like
yeah,
sometimes you're going to feel X, Y, Z. Sometimes you're going to feel great. Sometimes you're going to feel bad. I'm not
yeah,
saying you got to plow through everything. No. And I'm not
yeah,
saying that you got to lie down all the time. I think
mm,
this place for both, right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
especially for myself, of taking a bird's eye view and be like, all right, well, this is kind of this organic thing that we call me, and then this is how we're feeling. All right, sounds so the
mm,
two separate things, and then you can kind of look at it from the different part of the table, then
Yeah, I like
different
that. Yeah,
perspective,
yeah,
and
yeah. I suppose it provides like a bit of distance, doesn't it? Me and my
yeah,
feelings, and yeah, I
and you
quite
can
like
ask
that
why,
actually.
you can ask
Yeah.
why, and you can start to understand yourself a little bit more. And I think, mate, I think we don't have enough compassion for ourselves, dude.
Oh, yeah, completely.
Like
Yeah,
Christ Almighty, we make all the
I think that's
excuses for the
something.
world, for other people,
Yeah,
right? But for ourselves,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, this is something that I've been working on in my own therapy for a long time, and something that I find really common with people is that lack of self-compassion. And we tend to be kinder to other people, don't we? But if we're going through the exact same thing, we'll judge ourselves and be self-critical. In fact, one of the things I'll ask in therapy, if someone comes to me and says, "Oh, I feel really shit about myself because I've done X, Y, Z," I might say to them, "Well, if it was your friend and they'd gone through that, what would you say to them?" And they'd normally say, "Oh, it's okay, we make mistakes, it's all good." But to themselves, it's just like, you're an idiot, you're a loser, you're pathetic. And there's this mismatch between how we treat ourselves and how we treat others. Yeah,
mm.
it's interesting, isn't it?
Oh, mate, it's fascinating. It's so fascinating. I
Mm.
proper geek out over these things, and I stumbled across yourself, and I'm like, mate, I have no idea about this. Let's
Yeah,
have a conversation. Let's open up this
yeah,
communication channel, right? Here's a seat,
yeah,
take a seat. Your voice is
yeah,
heard, and
yeah,
mate, I'd love to dive into the niche of your stuff a little bit more. Tell me,
yeah.
like, I don't know. I'm a dude,
So,
obviously.
yeah, so do you mean the niche of maternal mental health, or do you mean like the therapy modalities that I offer, or what do
I'd
you
love to
mean?
hear both because I ain't a
Okay.
therapist. I like to joke
Yeah.
around saying strength and conditioning. So S&C is more strength and counseling,
Right. Okay. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But that's just talking about, like, it's not like here's a load of techniques, or you've got an array of certificates on the wall because you've studied this no, no, no. It's just you learn some soft skills with people, and then you kind
Yeah.
of just like push off and refer to other sides. You're like, yeah, probably
Yeah.
go see this person if you really need to.
Yeah. Yeah. So I spoke a little bit about maternal mental health and why I do that because of my passion about mothers. I've always also got a really big interest in trauma, and helping people through trauma, not necessarily just perinatal trauma. So that perinatal trauma can be any trauma that happens like in pregnancy, birth, and afterwards.
Oh,
But I also work with a lot of people that have had really difficult lives, that have had quite traumatic childhoods, growing up in environments where, from one end of the spectrum where they've been quite severely abused and neglected, but all the way down to the other end where they kind of had the holidays and they were looked after physically, but emotionally that their needs weren't met at all. So they weren't allowed to express certain feelings or needs, or they might have been shamed or judged for expressing them. And that causes quite long-term problems because children need to have their they deserve to have their needs met, and when the needs aren't met over time, it can really affect their belief system and how their brains develop and how their kind of life personality develops, and how they are in life. So and that it really kind of fascinates me, like working with trauma and stuff, because it can just have a huge effect on us. And I think a lot of people, when they hear the word trauma, they assume it can be something really like catastrophic, like
yeah.
being in a war zone, and that is trauma. But trauma can also be things that sound really simple, like getting told off in front of your class for making a mistake when you're reading and people laughed at you. That can be experienced as traumatic for a child, and that can affect them, that can get stuck in their system and affect them kind of going forward. So my role is to help people overcome their traumas, to give them symptom relief in the here and now. And I really, really enjoy that side of work as well. So I suppose I've got two different niches, if you like, and I love them both equally. So yeah.
How would you go about that?
Treating trauma?
Yeah.
So I would find out from the person what has brought you here to therapy, because the chances are they've come because they are struggling with something. It might be a set of symptoms, it might be relationship difficulties, but they come to therapy because something isn't working for them. And then I would kind of ask about that person's life and try and work out what are the things that have happened to you that may have played a role in why you've come to therapy. So in kind of psychology, there's this movement rather than what's wrong with you, what's happened to you. And I love that because it takes the pressure off the person and the blame off the person, that it's not my fault that I'm sat here needing help. I'm a product of my experiences. So
Yeah.
I would be looking at what are the things that have happened to you that may have led you to believe that you're a bad person, or that you're not safe, or that you're not in control of things. And then I would try and work out what experiences that might link back to. And then I would go back with that person and we would reprocess that experience to change the way that experience is stored in their brain. Because in trauma, we are the memories that we experience and the things that happen to us, they can not be processed right, and they can kind of get stuck, and they get triggered really easily in things in our day-to-day life that remind us of that past trauma. And it's like the brain gets confused between then and now, and you just get flooded with feelings and body sensations because your brain is thinking that you're back there when you're not. So it really is about teaching the brain and help, and that now is different and that we're
Mm.
okay now, and helping them to kind of heal from that, but also to change the way that event has made them believe about themselves. Because trauma isn't just what happens to us. Bless you.
Thank you.
Trauma isn't just what happens to us, but it's what did that experience lead us to believe about ourselves. And it's the meaning that we attach to trauma, which can also reinforce it being a trauma. So that's
Wow.
another thing I would look at. I would look at, what does that experience mean about you? So it might be, again, going back to that hypothetical example I gave a moment ago. If you're shouted at by your teacher for making a mistake when you read, it might be something like, I'm bad, I'm stupid, I'm pathetic. That might be the belief that they've learned about themselves. And that can be a belief that they carry forward in their life. So we would go back and look at that belief and look at reprocessing and changing that belief to change the way that person feels about themselves. So it's really, really powerful stuff, but it's quite in depth.
Wow. Do you find people can recall the exact event or the group of events, or do you find that sometimes you got to do a little bit more digging and you can kind of read between the lines and figure it out yourself?
Yeah, I think a bit of both. More often than not, the brain is so clever in looking back on what's connected to the now. So for some people, they don't know what is connected, but they know that they don't feel well in the here and now. So we've got kind of strategies that we can look at, a current situation where the problem has presented itself. And then I would ask that person just to kind of really think about that current situation and how their body feels and what beliefs they're having about themselves. And then to let go of that present situation and let the mind drift back to an earlier time where you felt like you're feeling right now. And the brain is so clever that it will just kind of bring up a time where you felt like that. And that would be what we would reprocess and target. That would be our kind of target memory, is what we call it.
Wow.
Um, but sometimes people do know. They'll come to me and say, I don't feel safe. I feel like I'm in danger and bad things are going to happen. And a year ago, I had a car accident and nearly died. And it's like, okay, so that would be what we would target, because that was the origin of you having these problems and symptoms. And it kind of fits with, if I don't feel safe now, what's happened to me that's led me to not feel safe? And we would then just kind of reprocess. And sometimes it's really obvious what the kind of target is.
Mm.
So it literally, even talking about it now, it just really blows my mind. I think the mind and the brain is just, it fascinates me. And I'm like you, a little bit of a geek. Like, I love learning things and, understanding things and stuff. And, I just find it's so fascinating.
Yeah, it's like unraveling yourself, and
Yeah.
unraveling a belief system which you've ended up creating. And a lot of the times that can be subconscious.
Yeah,
We end up being this
yeah,
character now, and it's like, well,
yeah,
how the fuck did I get here?
yeah, yeah,
You got to
yeah.
take those steps back and unravel it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But that is not to say that that's the right thing for everybody, because some people don't want to go back or feel like they don't need to go back, and we don't have to. So with trauma therapy, we do need to go back because it's normally the past that's present and the
Yeah.
past is leaking out into the present. But not everyone comes to me for trauma. I've got people that will come to me and say, I can't sleep very well and I'm really struggling to sleep and I'm starting to get anxious about going to sleep. I wouldn't necessarily do trauma work with that. I would just work on the here and now, unless the sleep problem is connected to trauma, and we would kind of exclude that first.
Mm.
But yeah, so I don't always work on the past. I'll just go by what the client wants. But if it's something like that, and there's nothing in the past that we think is linked, then I would use something like cognitive behavioral therapy. I don't know if
Mm.
you've heard of that.
Yeah.
So that's very much looking at our thinking styles and our patterns of behavior and coping and how they can become problematic in the here and now. So that's not necessarily about reprocessing the past. It's more about learning different ways of thinking and responding in the present to try and improve the problem, which might be sleep or panic attacks or what have you.
Mm.
So, yeah,
Why do you do what you do?
because I love helping people. I know that sounds really cheesy, but I genuinely do. I get so much joy from helping people, not just in therapy, but just in life. If I'm walking down the street and I walk past someone and they drop something, I'll pick it up for them or I'll help them. I'll stop and help. Like, I just genuinely like doing that. Um, but I also think as well that I've obviously got my own history of difficulties and I've, worked through a lot of my stuff. So I've been in the other chair,
Yeah.
or on the other side of the call if we're doing it over, over remotely. But I've been that person, I am that person. And, not to say that our experiences are exactly the same, but I know what it feels like to experience trauma and to feel anxious and to feel like you're struggling. And I feel like I've worked through a lot of that. And I think that can help me instill hope to some of my clients. Like I had a client today that came in and she just said, I just feel so hopeless. And I know what it feels like to feel hopeless, but I know that you can get through it, but it's just going to take us a bit of time. And I think that's another thing as well, is it's really nice to be able to provide that hope that I don't necessarily say, I've been there, I know how that feels, but I'll just
Yeah.
give them that hope that it feels really tough right now, but just trust me and trust the process and we will get you better. And then when you see them better and you see them leave and they are different and their lives are different, honestly, it's just the best feeling. It's lovely. I love it. And I don't think I'd ever want to do another job. Like I genuinely love my job and I always have.
Mm.
I remember when I first became a therapist and I had my interview, and I went to the one of the managers that interviewed me and I said to her, thank you so much for giving me this job because, I'm really happy to be here. And she joked and said, I'll come back in 3 months' time and tell me if you feel the same. And that was over 10 years ago. And I still get that same buzz out
Mm.
of doing the job. So I just love it. I know I sound really cheesy, but I don't care.
No, I don't sound cheesy, mate. Like, it really don't. Like, I feel the same thing inside the four walls of a gym. Like, and
Yeah,
all it is improving somebody's physical competency
yeah,
to prove to them their
yeah,
mental competency, to
yeah.
develop their confidence, and end up fucking moving out and having a better life. Like, I'd say we teach life through the medium of fitness, and that's it, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
But I love that though. I really do because I use like fitness as an example. For example, like with CBT, um, CBT is a little bit like if you want to lose weight and you find a gym instructor and they teach you some exercises and some strategies and they'll coach you in order to achieve those goals and you meet your goals and sometimes we can slip back because we've achieved those goals and CBT is very much like that.
mhm.
I'll teach you some strategies, but not necessarily physical exercises, more emotional and psychological exercises. But you have to keep doing that. You can't just go and see your therapist and then don't do anything and expect to get results. Just like with you, you probably wouldn't just do a training session and then want them to come back in a week and they're ripped and shredded, because you've got to put in the work behind closed doors, you know?
Yeah,
So
it's
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 quite similar.
humbling. It's very
Mm,
humbling, right? Like you got to do
yeah,
the hard work, and
yeah,
that's what I like. It's a physical representation of life. A
yeah,
barbell's always going to weigh the same, guys. You're going to feel
yeah,
good or bad. It's going to weigh the same. And that's
yeah,
it. Like you got to come in, you got to do some work, you got to go home. And I use the
yeah,
analogy of digging holes.
yeah.
Like every day you got to go outside, you got to dig a hole, right?
Mm,
Some days you're going to go out with a shovel. Other days you're going to go out with a frigging bulldozer. And some days you're going to go out with a teaspoon. But every single day you got to go
yeah,
outside, you got to dig a hole.
yeah, yeah.
And
That's a really good point.
that's the way I look at it, man. When
Yeah,
you're fucking down in the dumps and my head's so far up my ass, I can't see which way's
yeah,
up. I feel like an absolute piece of shit. And I'm like,
yeah,
it's just digging holes, man. But now I've
yeah,
got no teaspoon. Now I'm just clawing with my bare hands. It's like, all right,
yeah,
maybe we
yeah,
just do one thing.
yeah,
Take a
yeah,
pawn and move it one square forward in a game of chess,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
call it quits for the day, man.
yeah, yeah.
And eventually, over time, maybe it's going to take
Mm,
5 years, but you're going to be nailing 35 things a day.
yeah, yeah. It literally is really similar to CBT, you know, and looking at making small goals, and not, you know, if you had a goal of going out and digging 35 holes or whatever, using your analogy, you know, that might feel too much for someone that feels really, really bad. So
Mm.
you know, the small steps, getting the teaspoon out and just do a little bit and then come back in, and that's it for the day. It literally is the same as what we would look at with, you know, CBT. There's quite a lot of you know, parallels, I think, between what you do and what I do, because I suppose I'm working on the psychological side to maybe provide a bit more motivation for the physical, whereas you're looking at using the physical to then help the psychological. Do you see
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
It's two
And
sides
I
of the
don't think
same
there's a
coin,
right
man.
or wrong. Yeah, there's no right or wrong way. And I honestly think, like, with exercise, it is like the most underused anti-anxiety and depressant, because even though it can feel like a big slog getting to the gym or doing an exercise, a routine at home or something, like, you know, Joe Wicks, the body coach,
Mm-hmm.
he always says like your motivation comes after the workout, and I completely agree with that. But you can transfer that over to not just exercise, but, you know, when we're depressed, we can not pay bills and, you know, not clean the house and stuff, and it's like the motivation will come after you pay the bill or after you do the hoovering. Do you know what I mean? So there's kind of like these parallels.
Yeah. You just got to get up and do something. You
Yeah,
got to do some
yeah,
work, man.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I kind of get tripped up all the time. Like when a member comes in and says, "Coach, it's hard." I was like, "So's life."
yeah, yeah,
you know, like, what do you want me
yeah,
to do about it? You want me to take away the difficulty? No, I'd be doing you a disservice. I can
exactly.
fucking stand by you and be like, all right, let's walk into this, like kicking and
Yeah,
screaming and give it some
yeah,
big licks, mate.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So
chief,
you're
I
kind
got
of like the personal coach, you know, and I suppose my job is like coaching people through the psychological side of things. So it is just so similar, isn't it?
yeah, man. Like it's two sides of the same coin. I really do believe it.
Mm,
It's
mm,
it's the same issue. I say to everybody who trusts me and opens up a little bit more in terms of the mental health side. I say to them like,
yeah.
listen, 99% of people that have walked through these fucking doors do it for their mental, not for their physical.
Yeah.
They might
Yeah.
tell you they want X, Y, Z of
Yeah.
movements, of weight on the bar, of
Yeah.
whatever, but they're actually doing it for something upstairs. And I was like, dude, I've
Yeah.
been fucking doing this a long time. It's 99%
Yeah.
of people.
Yeah. Yeah. So do you get many people talking to you as their coach if they're coming in for a session? Would they talk to you about their mental health, or do you not really hear that?
All the time.
Well, that's
That's
really good
why
to hear, though.
that's why I started this thing that we're talking
Mm,
on now. Like
mm,
I nicknamed him the last one.
yeah.
Because I saw him once and I didn't see him for about 4 months. And
Mm.
he came to me and basically he said that he was in his garage with a noose around his neck,
Oh,
and ended up thinking back to the session that he had. Bear in mind, it was his one. first and only session, and then he disappeared for 4 months.
Yeah.
4 weeks, and then he came back and was like, yeah, I thought back to how good I felt for the rest of the day, and I've accomplished something. I did something for myself. You know what I
Oh
mean?
wow.
And was like, oh,
Yeah.
I decided to give it another bash, and kind of
Yeah.
took his last stand and gave it to himself. And
Mm.
still in contact now. He had another son, and yeah, man, like
Oh,
special, special, special thing,
yeah.
man.
Yeah, definitely.
Humble
That is.
beginnings,
And
mate.
I think, yeah, I think it's good that men are talking to men too about it because not always does that happen. I think again, maybe another big generalization, but like my husband will say to me, like women just get together and they just talk about feelings all the time.
Mm.
Whereas men, they'll talk about all, what they're doing, how work's been, but they might not necessarily say about the feelings. So it's really nice to know that that's not always the case.
Listen, I'm Mank, right?
You remind me of
We
the Oasis, the Gallaghers.
100%, mate. We have fucking hard conversations,
Yeah, yeah.
and I've realized from traveling around, from meeting a lot of different folk, that I got a pretty special couple families of, hey, listen, there's a fucking elephant in this room. You're gonna sit
Mm,
your ass down, and we're gonna
mm,
fucking talk until this elephant pisses off. And it could
mm,
take 3 weeks. We're gonna miss
mm,
work. We're not gonna sleep. We're gonna have it out.
mm. Yeah.
And inevitably it gets emotional. People start shouting. Everybody
Mm,
stands up, throws things, gets back down again, hugs, cries, and all this nonsense, right? But
yeah.
you clear the air, and
Yeah.
the kind of the thing was, you have to clear the air. You have to
Mm,
get it out, right? If we're gonna do it, we're
yeah.
gonna do it. And I've kind of took that further. Of like, that's not how I'm gonna treat members coming in, nor
Yeah. Oh
mates,
no.
right? But
Yeah.
I kind of got this feeling. I've seen a lot of people. It's got this feeling the energy changes in the room, the energy around you
Mm,
changes. I'm like, hi Laura,
mm,
how you doing, mate? How you doing today? You like, oh yeah, I'm alright. I'm sound. I'm like, are you gonna keep lying to me?
yeah.
That's what I'll say. Like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna keep asking if you're gonna keep lying. I was
Yeah.
like, that's all right. You don't have to tell me in front of everybody else, but just to
Mm,
let you know, mate, there is at least one motherfucker out there that gives a shit about you.
yeah. Oh, that's really nice.
It's
Because I think feeling cared for, especially when you're in the depths of whatever you're going through, sometimes
mm,
it can feel like you're the only one, no one cares. As part of we were talking about thinking styles and negative thinking. Part of depression can be that you just view things through like a negative lens. So
yeah,
you might really believe that no one cares about me, no one cares about my feelings and what I'm going through. And then to push themselves to come to the gym and then for you to say, do you know what, someone here cares about you, you're providing evidence that kind of disproves their negative thinking. And it might be something that makes them think, oh, the next time that thought comes in, oh, no one cares about me. Oh, but that dude at the gym, he said that he cared. And it can provide evidence to kind of counteract that like habitual negative thinking that we can all fall into.
100%, mate.
Mm,
I half joke about it, saying it's the job, because it is, but
yeah,
people can tell and sniff you out if you fake about it.
yeah, yeah.
And like, I'm gonna quote a very very good friend of mine, good mentor, Carl Steadman, and he says, "You can't teach give a shit."
Mm,
And I think over time our industries wean out the folk that care halfway, or just wanting to
yeah,
do it for a paycheck, or it was a shiny
yeah,
thing that we wanted to do for a time, and that's okay. That's
yeah,
fantastic.
yeah,
We've got spaces for that. But the ones that kind of make it a career and stick around and want to pursue this thing to the nth degree,
yeah,
it's like, no, 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 like, I can't sleep at night, man. Like, because I'll think
yeah,
about some member because their energy was fucking off. Like,
yeah.
I'll wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning for a podcast,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And then I'll be like, fuck Sam or Jeffrey or
yeah, yeah,
Barbara, and I can't stop thinking about them. So it's one of those, man. It's You just
yeah,
gotta, I mean, the way I live my life, wear your heart on your sleeve and speak from it as often as you
yeah.
can.
Yeah, definitely. I think
Exactly.
it is nice that you care, and I think again going back to the parallel between your job and my job is that I don't think you can be a therapist for money,
No.
even though it is very expensive to have therapy, but still, you're in this job because you care so much about the people that you work with and you care about helping them to get well. And and sometimes I wouldn't say often, but sometimes I've had one or two clients who really stick with me. I remember doing an assessment with someone who had experienced the most horrific abuse that I've ever heard, and I was holding my tears in. And as soon as she left my therapy room, I just burst into tears because I just felt so sad for what she'd been through, and it really stayed with me. So I can kind of relate to that, but I wouldn't say it happens often,
Mm,
but you'll just get that one, I would say one or two people in my career that has just really stuck with me, or maybe they remind me about myself or someone that I know that's gone through something, and it can kind of stick with you.
mm.
But it sticks with you because you care, and that's not a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing, mate. I think the world needs a
Mm.
little bit more people that give a shit about
Yeah,
somebody
I
else.
know. I know. I completely agree. Yeah, definitely.
I'm not arrogant enough to believe that people make the world spin, but I do think the synergy between us helps it a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, completely.
Mate, I'm gonna do a charity event in 2025, and
Oh wow.
I'll let you know off record. See if you got any ideas.
Okay.
I think it probably relates to some stories that you've heard. So
Yeah.
yeah, mate, it'd be cool to get you on board.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, tell me once we finish this, we'll stay on and you can tell me whatever it is. Sounds
Yeah, man,
exciting.
I'll flick you a message or something.
Yeah,
Mate,
brilliant.
this has been an honor and a privilege. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for getting up at 5 a.m.
Nah, I'll do it all over again, mate. Don't worry about that.
Oh, bless you. You
It's a
take care.
it's a privilege being able to talk to people, hold space, like
Yeah.
someone holding space for to hear what my Manc accent's gotta say. It's kind of
Yeah.
crazy, mate. It's been a long journey, so I just want to say
Yeah.
thank you, mate.
No, and thank you for what you do, and being that person that does care and that opens up and gets the conversation going. Because honestly, I think that's a really, really good thing. So keep doing that as well.
Oh, I just talk shit, mate. Don't worry about that. You have
I'm not
a great
disagreeing.
evening.
Right, you take care. Have a good day. What are you going to do now? Are you going back to bed or are
No, man,
you up for the day?
that's it. We're in. We're in for work.
Yeah. Oh, we'll enjoy.
Thank you, mate. All right.
All right, take
Have a good
care.
day.
Bye.
Speak soon.
Bye.
Bye. Bye,
Bye.
everybody.